Straight off to LBC's reporter Liam Gotting, who's in Altrincham. Explain why you're there and what people are saying, Liam. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Well, for those who have never been, Altrincham is a leafy little town just on the outskirts of Manchester, but migration has been the number one topic of conversation here for the last 3 to 4 weeks after a local hotel, the Cresta Court, began housing 300 asylum seekers. Residents here only learned about the new arrivals because thousands of bookings were suddenly cancelled, along with meetings and even wedding receptions, as the hotel cleared its commitments to make way for these asylum seekers. Now, of course, Nick, we know that this is replicated in various parts of the country, costing the government upwards of £5 billion a year. And some local people even took part in a protest outside the hotel a couple of weeks ago, particularly after finding out at a town meeting with local council leaders and community police officers that the asylum seekers in the hotel were to receive free private health care. So migration was already hot on the lips of this town before yesterday's news that the net migration figures were 906,000 in the year up to June 2023 and 728,000 in the 12 months up to June this year. Here's what some people in Altrincham have had to say about that figure.
It's outstanding, really, because they're supposed to be kind of stopping it, and it's just getting bigger and bigger all the time. It's too many now. We need to sort it out. Got to look after the people over here.
It's very high and there's nothing being done about it. It needs to be addressed more seriously, and the only way that it's going to be changed is by legislation, really. Illegal is the big one. Why should people just come and get more here than anywhere else?
As long as they're putting something into society, then we can give it back to them, that's what we want. If they're going to put into society with, they come and they have a job and they've got a skill, fantastic.
Now, Nick, of course, the asylum seekers that have moved into the local hotel aren't the first migrants to move to Altrincham. The town, like many others across the country, has seen a gradual population increase over the years due to migration in the UK from Eastern Europe and Hong Kong. I asked those same people what effect, if any, it's had on the town.
A lot of people are a bit scared now what's happening around here, which isn't good. I've been out with my friends today and everyone is like, do you know, we've got to set a stop to this.
It's put the population up higher and probably put a strain on the GPs and the hospitals and such forth, and the schools for young children, for infant class, even secondary schools.
I haven't seen a change as yet. There are a lot worse areas. I haven't seen an impact on it. I've looked and I haven't really seen an impact on it yet. The impact is the hidden impact, which is financially to everybody.
Well, Nick, at yesterday's press conference, the Prime Minister said he wants to bring down the numbers significantly, although wouldn't put a figure on what would be acceptable. But it's another issue that Sir Keir Starmer will have to get to grips with if he wants to maintain his support in towns like Altrincham, where Labour took it from the Tories in the last general election, because right now it's the main thing the town is talking about.
LBC's reporter Liam Gotting, 13 minutes after 7. Let's bring into the conversation Ben Brindle, who's a researcher at the Migration Observatory specialising in net migration, and joins me now. What strikes me, if you drill down to the figures, is that a lot of people will be saying, oh, it's the boats, it's the illegal crossings. In fact, this year we're talking about around 30,000 individuals came via boats, 444,000 came via study visas. These are areas we need to look at, aren't they, Mr. Brindle? Good morning.
Morning. Yes, you're completely right. In terms of the main factors which have been driving migration over the past couple of years, it's been primarily people coming to study in the UK and people coming to work as well, and particularly in the health and care sector. Care workers, in fact, were the most common job as well, and so it's less about small boats and more about the visa policies that are in place and the people that can come to the UK on visas. Now, I should say that we think that the number of people coming to the UK to study and to work is now declining. We can see that in visa data, but they aren't quite. These changes aren't quite visible in the net migration statistics that were released yesterday, and that's because these changes came into force earlier this year, so only cover the later part of those statistics.
What levers are there in this field that the government could pull?
Well, I think that the types of migration that are easiest to influence are work migration and study migration. So some of the things which came into force earlier this year, and as I said, I think are going to lead to a fall in people coming to work and study in the UK. The previous government banned international students from bringing their family members with them to the UK. They also, as well, this isn't quite policy per se, but they've increased the scrutiny with which they look at applications from care providers for migrant care workers, and that follows widespread reports of exploitation in the sector. And it looks, as I say, that applications for care workers are falling. Now, in terms of, for example, the impact of migration on the public finances, it's these groups, people coming to work, people coming to study, that broadly speaking tend to have a more of a benefit, whereas those groups which are less beneficial, so family migrants or people claiming asylum, these types of policy are a lot more difficult to influence. It's a lot more difficult to influence those numbers. And so it's possible to reduce levels of net migration with the work and study people, but that then can have knock-on impacts in different areas.
Ben Brindle is research at the Migration Observatory. Thanks for your input on that. So there's that number, 906,000. It's slightly greater than the population of Leeds, which comes in at around 820,000. I'm asking, what has the impact been for you? It is not racist. It is neither Little Englander or Little Brit being a Little Britain to talk about the impact on your area, because these sort of figures, unless you provide for more hospitals, provide for more schools, provide for more roads, and, God knows, provide for enough housing, are unsustainable. Why is it allowed to continue? John Vine was former UK Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, and he joins me now. So the reality is, we thought it was 728,000. It is, in fact, 906,000. But before people get too excited about small boats, they accounted for broadly 30,000 of those. 440,000 were here for study visas. What do you take from the figures? You're an expert, John. Morning.
Good morning. Well, of course, we're talking about two things. The 33,000 are people who are arriving on the shores illegally, but actually it's dwarfed, isn't it, by the figures we saw published yesterday.
Yep.
And the irony is, of course, post-Brexit, the government is totally in control of those figures that we published yesterday. So these are... we went to Brexit, we were told, take back control, but it looks and it gives the impression that there is no control over this figure. And the ONS correction makes that feeling even more acute, in my view.
What should the government be doing that they're not doing, in your view, John?
The government should listen to the Migration Advisory Committee. They have a panel of experts which tells them where the vacancies in the employment sectors are and where those vacancies can be filled by employing people in the UK, and where there's a shortage which needs people to come in from abroad. They need to have a credible plan which makes sure that in future they're not surprised by these figures. I think the irony is that, we're all surprised by the figures, including the government, and it's the government that shouldn't be. They should be having a dialogue with the public about how many people we allow in on visas every year, where they're going, and what the reasons for them coming to the UK are. And so the whole issue of this being something that, surprises everybody is ridiculous.